Photo finish racing is going to bring the most realistic horse racing and betting experience to the NFT industry that we have ever seen. In this video, I got to sit down with Ian Cummings, the CEO of Photo Finish Racing. In this video, you'll get to hear about what sets apart Photo Finish Racing from other horse racing games, how they're going about the legal ramifications of crypto betting, and how the virtual sports world might just take over the entire sports industry. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Ian is a part of the Photo Finish Racing team. And Ian, thank you so much for taking the time to sit here with Balthazar. I'm really curious to learn more. I know we did the research report and now that we get to sit down and just chat a little bit. So why don't you just start off, who are you? Who are you within the team of Photo Finish Racing, and just help us get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, happy to be here. So my name's Ian Cummings. I'm the founder and CEO of Third Time. So Third Time Games has been my company since 2015. And I've been basically, running a bunch of horse racing idea studio stuff for a long time. And so, Photo Finish Live, going onto the blockchain, we really kind of jumped in feet first and started planning for that last year. It's been about 7-8 months in development with a full team backing it now, and so we're really excited, getting really close to launch.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're very excited for it, and I'm curious for you, what was the fascination? I mean, you've been in this space, you said, for like almost 7-8 years now. Did you grow up watching horse racing? Like, what brought you into this whole space?
No, I really didn't know anything about horse racing when I started back in the day. I just thought, I had worked at EA Sports for 10 years. I was the Madden creative director when I left.
Oh, wow.
And so I was just really ingrained in sports. I'd grown up around sports. My grandfather was an NFL coach, and I'd always been around football. I played soccer my whole life, or football. And so always into sports, always into, very competitive nature. And just around 2015, 2014, I was just really kind of burned out at the job that I'd had and felt like I could make something on my own. And horse racing just felt like an area, as I started looking around, that was really underserved. There were no good games. Everything was really, really weak. And it was also small enough that I thought that if it was successful, it wouldn't be a threat to an EA. They wouldn't try and come push me out. It just felt like they would never even try to make a horse racing game. So I thought, well, this is small enough for, me to accomplish. It's like an easy enough sport to make by myself, as opposed to like trying to make a soccer game or a football game by myself. It would just be too hard. So I just started with really a prototype, really quick and dirty, kind of hacky version. And it blew up, it got millions and millions of downloads. And so I was able to create the studio off of the back of that mobile game.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like what is in the market that is really underserved. I like what you said there. And it almost sounds like you're trying to, escape EA a little bit and make sure they don't come after you, which, they do own, quite a bit of a monopoly on a lot of the sports games as people have.
Yeah. And
seem to
having
recognize.
been there, all those years, a decade, I saw how competitive they were if someone entered their space and how ruthless they could be. And so I just didn't want to even have to consider or deal with that. That was the whole point for me. Just try and be out on my own, find an underserved niche that, I could deliver on high quality, but, without having to have a team of 100 people or whatever to do it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you found your niche, and it seems like you're going from a niche to even a more of a niche. So walk me through that story too of, you already have a couple successful games. Why bring it over to the blockchain? Why integrate all these NFTs now into this third version of the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the mobile games have been out. We have 2 horse racing mobile games. Both are very different. One is an arcade game, and the other one's very much like a simulation of being a horse owner. Those games have been running for years and years, and kind of keeping the studio afloat, but not making us wildly successful or anything like that. And around the beginning of 2021, I started. I saw Top Shot taking off and was just getting really super interested in the space myself, in the NFT space, and really realizing that it was just such a perfect fit for horse racing, for us, the way our games operate, the way they run now, especially the horse racing manager game, is this, really solid economy that's, horses are aging and decaying out of the system, so people have to breed new ones, and it's got this really kind of fresh look every single week. There's a whole new fresh set of people that are competing because the horses are aging out of the process. They're aging out of the game. And, it's been a long goal of ours to say, well, wouldn't it be great if on our mobile game, if the players could breed with each other, because the mobile game now, they have to buy stuff from us. Our store has loot boxes with horse breeding rights in them. And, I never really liked doing that, but that's how mobile games make money. Like, if you don't do those, then you don't pay the bills. And so, it just kind of was a perfect storm of seeing that, of like, well, wow, if we actually built a great game and let the players own the economy entirely, then we could just get paid on the royalties and transfer fees. And then it was just sort of like, I was seeing that groundswell of people now trusting this blockchain and crypto system enough that they would, invest in a horse or a NFT and trade it and sell it. And so it was just kind of like a no-brainer. I talked to the other founders that had joined, and just sort of like explained to them what I saw, and they're just like, yeah, it's way better. I mean, it's like it actually makes the game better, and that's the thing that I don't think a lot of games have thought through. There's a lot of blockchain games that are just maybe kind of tacking on NFTs, and you can see certain game studios that talk about it, and their audience hates them, for it. But with us, it's actually really, really a good fit. It's now the chance for these horse owners to make money instead of only spend it. They can get paid instead of just us. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I love that perspective, and I think it's a cool, I guess, behind the scene look about the vision and mission and the heart behind it, because I think a lot of people see, first of all, mobile games is interesting to hear your perspective of, it's not the way we wanted to do it necessarily, but this is just the way it works, right? Like, you have to pay the bills. There's a reality to it. But I think some people see that as like, oh, all these mobile games and these other games are just making microtransactions and milking us for all they're worth. And, being able to say, hey, now there is a better solution, even though maybe some people, in the outside world still see NFT gaming maybe as a scam or a pyramid scheme, or you name the kind of accusations that they'll say about it. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and it can be. I mean, that's
sure.
the thing. I don't the hardcore gamer that is very much angry or thinks that this thing is all a big joke or a scam, like you said, because there are a lot of scams out there, and gamers, myself being one of them, have been taken advantage of quite a bit for the last 10 years. It's like, we get rug pulled all the time in terms of a game promises this and it's not that, or it's $60 and then they hit us with another 100 worth of DLC. And I grew up in the old days of the game was in the box and it was done and that was it and that was worth it. And then now to get to where you end up having to pay $1,000 to enjoy the experience over the course of the game, I get it. So I get their hesitance, but that's the thing that I try to educate people, is like, this is actually wildly different. And the economy flips on its head to be yours, and to not be someone else's, not be the game companies, but to actually pay you.
Well, so when you're talking to these people that don't know about NFT games, or maybe you're hesitant, and you're talking about educating them, what would like your quickest pitch to them be, or quickest thing to say, like, hey, like, this is actually a really cool thing that's happening in gaming? What do you go to for those types of conversations?
So that's a great question, and I've tried multiple ways. It just kind of depends on the audience, but I think one of the easiest ways to tell people about just sort of the core of NFTs is that it's just like baseball cards or Pokemon cards or collectibles. And that's, so many people have this just impossible. They cannot grasp the idea of a digital asset on a blockchain and all. And I understand it's really complicated, but if you think of it more like, no, it's a baseball card, and that's the difference. That you can prove that there's only 10 of this card in existence by. Used to be, you looked at the Beckett's in the magazine, you're still having to trust some centralized entity. But so then, sometimes I'll dig a little deeper, like, well, why do the blockchain actually matters in this case, where everyone can be on the same page and see for real what is scarce and what is rare. And then, value comes from anywhere. I think everyone just sort of will immediately be so dismissive about, what a picture of an ape cannot be worth, $300,000, and it's like, well, if it makes you 500,000, isn't it? Or, so that's the thing that's tough. But yeah, I always just try to go back to that. And then with the horse racing one, it's actually just so much easier. It's like, imagine you owned a horse Let's talk about how it would be to own a horse. Now it's virtual. It's the same exact thing. There's nothing different about what we're doing in terms of what happens in real life of a horse owner compared to virtual. We're trying to really make it almost exactly the same.
Yeah, it seems like you're really trying to keep it simple for people, and I think that's really what the goal of what we should be doing when we're trying to educate people and bring people into the spaces. Sometimes we just make it way too complicated as we're trying to describe all these things. So I like that you're trying to bring down.
We started off poorly, in that we had all those stylish studs and fine fillies and all these things, feed into this different system and they breed and that. And, that was a big lesson for us. But really, that just started as us testing the waters. We're just trying to see if anyone even really cared about us or about the company. But looking back, we probably could have done that a little bit better. We could have just started without that. We just started right into the horse racing game. But we were just, testing stuff out at the beginning. And it was fun to see it kind of catch like, wildfire within these communities. But yeah, that part has been hard for us because we want to, in one sentence, be able to explain, just get a horse and race it. That it's very simple. But for the last 6 months, it was not simple at all. It was like, go get 2 pictures of cartoon horses, and then those will create a horse. But you want to make sure that they match. And, there was a lot of this really hard stuff. So we actually, at one point, I think I remember having a meeting with the team. I just said, look, let's just give up on explaining this part. This is going to be purely, if people are in the know, they're in the know. And if they're in the Discord and they're listening to the Twitter spaces, then that's great. They're getting the alpha. But eventually, once it becomes a very simple racing ecosystem, then we'll be able to create a lot more content that's easy to understand. So
yeah, that's good. So walk me through a little bit more about the game, because kind of as you were saying earlier, I had that same experience where I grew up as a sports person, football, golf, baseball, all that, but not necessarily horse racing. So I'm curious, what has been the response, and what do you think the response will be moving forward? Do you think this is mostly targeting people that are like really into watching these horse races, the Triple Crown races, or do you think this is expanding to anyone and everyone, and you're going to be able to bring people in that maybe have no care about the horse racing part and maybe just want to raise a horse? Like, how do you think about your target audience?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a blend, of course. I think right now the majority of our community and audience is crypto forward rather than horse racing forward. And so, they see an opportunity to, monetize as well as play a game, and it probably didn't matter what that game was. They just are excited about it. But what has been really fun and interesting to see is people that had literally zero idea about the sport have been soaking in all of the knowledge. They've been watching the sports or watching the races with us on Discord or what have you. They're putting in bets. They're gambling on these races. They're learning how the bets work, how pari-mutuel wagering works. And that's pretty exciting. And that's been a goal of mine for forever. Since we started this is, I saw how kind of hostile it was to be a fan of horse racing. The general sport itself has done very little to acquire new young people. It's very much an older person's game. It's very hard to understand. There's no central governing body or commissioner like a Roger Goodell or something to kind of keep everything together. And then there's of course always all this negative news about it because of poor treatment of the animals. And so it's just like it's kind of really a rough spot to be in as a old school horse racing fan, and that's what I look at this as, like, we can be this injection of a brand new audience that is just competitive and very much into gambling and wagering. They're just sports fans because it's so exciting. It's a really, really fun sport. I've talked about it before, but like in the US in the 70s, like horse racing was the #2 sport. It's where families took, or like that's where their families went on every weekend, was to go to the horse races. It was just like a really great place. Where it's like right now, if you go with your family to a horse race, it's like taking them into a casino. It's pretty degenerate sometimes, depending on the place. And so I think part of that for me is just really like, let's class this thing up a little bit. Let's bring it up to a new level where young people can understand it, where they start to like it, and then they can bridge over into the real world. They start getting interested in actually owning a real horse, or they start getting interested in going to the races themselves and really enjoying the sport, because it's such a blast. It's like really, really fun. It's just, there hasn't been much reach out. There's no big thing other than the 3 Triple Crown races in the US that attract anyone to it at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it could potentially have the reverse effect, and that's when we were covering this video and the tweets were coming in. That was one of the responses of someone. They were like, "Hey, I've never been into horse racing, but now that I'm into this game, I'm actually kind of watching now the real life event." And it's almost like a flip the script of, instead of you watch the real sports and now you're into the NFTs. It's like, oh, the younger generations, they understand online, they understand the virtual, and now maybe we use the virtual to revive what maybe could have been a dead sport or something like that, and
Yeah.
bring it back to life, which is really an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like as a kid, I would have never known anything about NHL hockey if it hadn't been for NHL on my Genesis. Like I knew all the players. I learned all the teams. I learned the rules all from video games back in the day because that sport wasn't on TV. It's different for the NFL or something that's on all the time. But video games have that, you know, really, really helpful thing there of like, onboarding people, especially young people that maybe don't have access to it. So horse racing is not on TV, for anyone at any time of the day, except for 3 times a year on this one race, that everyone just basically drinks through. They don't even barely watch it. So there's a lot that we can do there to really grow the sport, because what's so wild is that it is insanely popular. It's still like, the top 5, top 7 sports in the world. It's just that like, it's kind of gotten lost, in America, and in certain, a lot of locales don't even show it at all. But places that do, I mean, like somewhere like Japan, they're setting records every year on how much they gamble on it and how much is watched. So it's crazy. It's such a weird, and this is all stuff I learned, going in of like, wow, this is really a really big deal sport. It's just kind of behind the times a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the research report, but in the end of it, they're talking about maybe a speculation of, you guys have the Sweets project as well, right? And I don't know how much you can talk about that or talk about the future with that. But part of what they were saying is like, hey, maybe there's a world where you guys are in the position to make an entire sports betting metaverse, and do you see that potentially being what speaks to the younger generations more so, and potentially maybe even eclipses real life events? I don't know if that's possible, but I wonder, how do you think about that future of sports betting and these online events versus the in person?
No, it does. I mean, you can see the growth of esports and how, the viewership of those, geez, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that would just be such a laugh if someone would have said, oh no, there's going to be more viewers of, League of Legends than, nearly every other pro sports final game. No one would believe any of that stuff. And so, and obviously the youthful audience, my kids, they love watching people play video games, and they love watching spectator friendly games that aren't real sports. And so I do think there's a big future there with the Sweets in general, and specifically, we do have this great opportunity to build a sports and gambling centric wagering experience for younger people that is a little more like just kind of quirky and fun and crazy, that I don't think anyone else has the experience to do, nor would they really want to take the risk. I think that like not many people are embedded in sports the way we have been for almost my whole team has been embedded in sports and sports games and sports gambling and sports wagering for our whole careers. And so it does look like an area that is just kind of wide open, the same way that I felt about photo finish, where it's like, this is being underserved. No one's attacking this in Web3. The projects that are out there are really young or early, or maybe they don't necessarily get it. Whereas I think we could really own this whole space of, starting with people in the Suites can wager on photo finish races, and then hopefully really soon after they can wager on real life ones, and then they can wager on real life sporting events, and then they can just keep going and going, playing poker, playing casino games. I think we can really build all that stuff out and hopefully dominate that little niche, but the niche that's massive. It's like people again think about majority of all of the metaverse plays out there are just everything ever. You can play, you can do anything. And for us, it's like, no, sports, this is going to be who we go after. We're not going to try and compete with someone that's trying to do everything ever with Snoop Dogg and, whoever else is hanging out in there. We're going to, maybe Snoop's in ours, but he's playing sports.
Sure.
So that's the whole point for us, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot more sense. It's like, hey, we're going to focus on doing what we do best and really serve that niche well, which it seems like it's already worked really well for you guys. Walk me through a little bit of the betting side of things. I'm curious because NFTs and crypto is so global. How do you guys handle that with I'm sure every country's regulations are completely different on gambling. I know even in the U.S., state to state is different. So how do you guys
Yep.
go through the legal part of that?
Well, we hire attorneys and they cost a fortune, and we kind of do it, one by one, right? We just move our way through. For example, we did the US first. That cost so much money, but we went state by state, had attorneys give legal opinion on which states could handle which parts. So, Photo Finish, the horse racing game, is specifically split into kind of two parts. One is owning a horse and entering it into a race. So you would pay to enter that horse into the race, and if your horse wins, then you're going to get the majority of the pot, that you guys all pooled together. So that's sort of mostly, I don't want to say all states, but like 35 or 36 states. That's cool. And then the other style of that is that you're watching us and you just want to wager on that race without a horse in the race. That is much closer to actual gambling and wagering. The first one being closer to skill. It's a skill-based game at that point because there's a lot to learn and do and train and all these things to make sure that you win. Whereas the spectator wagering, certain states treat that differently. So that one's around 17 states right now that would allow spectator wagering. And so, the way we handle that is, we geolock. So you can't do those things in those territories. The things that we're trying to make sure we build out are ways to play that for free and still be able to do that without violating laws. Because the last thing I want to do is just have like a bunch of people that just maybe they built up stables and then they just have to quit. I would like them to stay in the ecosystem because there are things that we can do that don't have to be for real money that are still fun. Unlike in real life, I think that we can make a game that is fun that doesn't require spending. I'm not stupid to know that the majority of these crypto people are here to make money, so it's important to them. But I also think that we don't have to shut it off entirely for other people. We can have ways for that to be fun. It's just like, our mobile game has been obviously operating in every territory worldwide for 5 years, and there's no real money on the line, and people still play it. So it's like there is something there that people can do. But yeah, we just kind of go territory by territory. We have opinions on a couple other territories, and basically we just unlock them as we go. We have set up another entity that is working on like actual gambling license stuff. And so the things that might be more complicated. So the reason that we're able to go pretty quickly in the US, for example, is we are a skill-based game. But if we were to get somewhere where we actually wanted to allow just straight gambling, like it is a pure wager, it's no skill, it's gambling. It's the same as a slot machine, if you want to say it like that. It's the same as operating a casino. We have to have separate licenses for that, different entity. And but that is also something that we're working through, so that something like the suites could have a much more of a wide open gambling and wagering experience than whereas Photo Finish is clearly like this little small sect of how horse racing works. So yeah, it's complicated, but just you get attorneys. I mean, everyone's done it before. There's a million online casinos. It's
Mm-hmm.
not possible to do.
I'm curious, have you guys had more challenges because it's in crypto and NFTs rather than
No,
on just same thing really, huh?
it's the same, and that's what's funny is a lot of people say, "Well, this is different." It's like people outside that say, "I bet you can do this a lot easier because it's crypto, because it's tokens," and that's just like a really, really big misconception. Like value is value. Doesn't matter where it is. And us being a U.S. company, we need to be above board. I mean, I think there's people in other territories where they've set up entities offshore, and they can say, "Well, yeah, if you gamble for tokens, that's not gambling." But it is. It's clear. Like all of these things are illegal in the U.S. if they're not done correctly. You do have to get licensed, or you have to have, the right state by state shut offs, and all those things actually have to be done. But we'll see. Like I don't know. A lot of people have a different risk profile than I do. I'm trying to get a game that'll last 5, 10, 15 years. I don't want to have it get bankrupted in the middle of it, right when the players have invested a bunch of money. So I think the players, it seems like so far of our community, get disappointed when they find out certain things are going to be shut off for them or locked out. But I think they all understand that it's more important that we stay alive and do it above board rather than like try and go fast and then break a bunch of laws and then end up, in prison or
Yeah.
whatever,
No, I mean
or at
that's
least fined,
clearly good to hear, because I think that's what a lot of games are doing, right? They are just focused on the short term. They're not thinking, how do we survive actual 5-10 years as a game? And maybe it's just because they're from a different country as well, as you said. They can do some of these things where it's just like randomly in their game they have betting just because there is crypto NFTs, even if the game isn't even focused around that. And I, as an American, I'm like, I don't know if that's really gonna fly forever. You might have some struggles there. So it's good to hear you guys are actually doing the groundwork so that you can have that long term success. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I mean, that was a key thing I told the community about too. Is like, that was before I did anything with Photo Finish Live, is I paid out of pocket to do that first legal review, which just hurt. I mean, that was a lot of money before we had raised anything, but it was like, I can't go and try and raise venture funds. I can't try and do an NFT drop. I'm not going to do any of this stuff until I know we can actually pull this off. And so that was the key part. Like, I need to know what's legal and what isn't. And it's a big crash course on sort of, each state's law and making sure that we're doing things correctly. So it always makes me nervous. I mean, no matter what, there's always these gray areas, and that's especially with tokens and things like that. There's not really any laws for those yet. So that area is rough. I'm seeing all these people doing all kinds of crazy token stuff that is so much in the sights of a U.S. security and violating security laws. But there's not many laws written yet for tokens specifically, so I understand. But that's one area that always makes me nervous. We've been planning on releasing a token forever, and it's just sort of like I'm getting another legal review done just to make sure, because the last thing I want to do is just have that blow up in my face.
Yeah. Well, I think it instills confidence that people can actually get into this project. Because as you said earlier, like, there's a lot of people that have been burned. And while it's exciting at first, after that first taste of a token tanking or legal issues or whatever, that's enough to leave a bad taste for, potentially for years to come about your game or about NFT gaming in general. So appreciate you guys taking the time.
It's kind of a death knell, if you get something over you. I mean, I guess Ripple and a few other ones have been kind of hanging around, but it's you don't want to be in those crosshairs for sure.
Well, as we wrap up today, I just want to give you a chance to brag about the game specifically. I know we talked about, the legal, the betting, all that. But specifically, I want to hear from you. If someone hasn't heard about your project or hasn't seen it before, like, what is going to set Photo Finish Racing apart? What is it that, like, hey, this is going to be the game versus, a lot of people might recognize Pegaxi or whatever, name your NFT racing game. What's going to set Photo Finish apart?
So, I mean, the primary difference between Photo Finish and the competition is just really our focus on authenticity and strength of our team, and really the core design having a very long-term vision to it. And so there's plenty of horse racing games that have come out with short-term vision. They pop their token price and then it craters after because they haven't quite thought it all through. Now, of course, there's going to be areas that we need to get improved and fix and do better. But the whole entire goal of our game is to stay as realistic and as true to real life as possible. So if you are a fan of horse racing in general, you should hopefully have a little more appeal to a game like ours that does look like real life. Our goal is to be photorealistic almost as close as we can with our small team, and try and make it, not fantasy. I think every other game has basically copied Zed Run for the most part. And, we're trying to look like we're nearly indistinguishable from real life. But the other key part is, the economy. So the point of our game is to become a successful long-term player by creating great bloodlines that last years and years and years. It's not about finding one horse and racing him 10,000 times to return your investment. It's more like real life. It's about finding your one diamond in the rough horse that you paid not very much for, winning some races with him, and then breeding champions over and over and over again later, and making breeding fees over the lifetime. People don't realize a lot, if they're not in the horse racing, industry or in the space, that these top horses like Secretariat or American Pharaoh or Justify, the ones that have won the Triple Crown, they won maybe $5 or $6 million while racing, and then they make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars while breeding. That's where the money is. And that's what's so interesting about the horse racing space, is that once you get a champion, you want to get him off of the track because it's too risky to get him hurt. You want to actually have a long breeding career And that makes the game and the sport more interesting because there are brand new horses every single year that are coming into the system. And so that's what we're trying to create. We've got all of that stuff happening. Your horses are aging. They are leaving the game. They're leaving the system. They can no longer race. They do get injured. These types of things, you have to take care of them and race them correctly and just try and build a successful stable over time. It's not about getting one single horse and winning forever. It's about playing for the long haul, and you can play at every different stakes level. You can play at cheap races, or you could try and win, our version of a Kentucky Derby. Try and go for a multiple $100,000 purse. So it's kind of built for everyone, and hopefully, people will get a lot of strategy out of a game like this that really I think has been lacking. There really isn't many. There are very few games that are strategy based on blockchain in general that have a lot of depth like this. And hopefully that scratches the itch of people that are into fantasy football, they're into gambling, they're into horse racing. It should hopefully get all of that for that audience.
Yeah. One tiny question I got to sneak in here because the team and I were just so curious. The NFTs you're talking about, they can get injured, all age, all that stuff, and eventually they die. So I think this is the first time, maybe ever, that I've heard of any game having NFTs that essentially die. How does that work? Is the NFT, do you still own it? Does it disappear? Is it usable in any way? Or is it just kind of worthless?
No, it's not. Well, I guess it's worth what you think, but our plan is that they, in essence, flip instead of being a horse to being a plaque of the horse. Some sort of statue that shows their history, their metadata becomes how, what they provided while they were alive. So it's quite a ways out. They age a year every single month. Most horses live to be 25 years old, so it's a good 2 years away before we even see one of these things happen. But that's the idea, at least, is that they eventually. And also 2 years in crypto feels like
forever,
100 years. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone's even going to have one by then, but the heat death of the universe might happen before that. But I do think that there is, collectible, value there for people. What did Secretariat's owners do once Secretariat passed on? They built a statue. So you end up with a little bit of a memorial memory to that horse. And so if it's got collectible value to you, then it does. We'll see. People may just trash them. I don't know, but I would hang on to mine. My good ones, at least.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I love the unique ideas you guys are bringing to the table. I love and really appreciate you, Ian, taking the time, as well as really, it sounds like you guys are building out and taking the time it needs to develop a good game, good economy, go through the right legal steps. And I really appreciate about that, you and the team. So thank you for doing that. Anywhere people can follow along if they want to join the community, if they want to learn more about photo finish racing, where would you point them to?
Yeah, I guess the first level to start is probably just the Twitter. That's where everything is the most active. So if you see Photo Finish Game, I believe is the actual handle. That'll give you all the links. There's a link tree associated there that you can find the Discord, the website, the Instagram, and all those other socials. But yeah, drop on the Twitter, Photo Finish Game, and start to learn. There's a million things to learn. It's a really deep thing, but don't get intimidated. It's also at some level, it's really, really deep in terms of how the breeding works, and it's genetics based, and there's all this stuff. But at the top level, just get a fast horse and run him in a race. It's really pretty much that simple. I hope that he wins. And then you can dig deeper from there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I hope everyone checks out your game here, and we wish you best of luck. I'm sure here at Balthazar we'll keep partnering with you guys here for future content as well as you guys progress. So thanks for the time today, Ian, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Luke.
Well, thank you again, Ian, for joining us in this interview. If you want to listen to other interviews, go check out one of these playlists, or also find us on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, or your favorite podcast platform. You can also jump over to Balthazar's website to learn more about our marketplace, Launchpad, our research, and our scholarship programs. For now, peace out, Palalam, adios, everyone.